My mother's voice came through my phone at 2 in the morning, 3 years after I buried her. I'm Allison Monroe. I'm 29 years old. I work as a hospice social worker in Savannah, Georgia. I live alone in the house where I grew up, the same house where I watched my mother take her last breath in a hospital bed we set up in the living room. Before I tell you what she said, I need to know, do you believe our loved ones can send us signs after they're gone? Or is it just our minds playing tricks? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. The humidity in Savannah doesn't just sit on you, it owns you. It was 2 in the morning, and the air inside my Victorian rental felt heavy enough to bruise. Outside, a tropical storm was battering the coast, turning the Spanish moss into wet, gray rags whipping against the windows. The power had been flickering for an hour, dancing between dim yellow and total darkness. I lit a candle. Vanilla. My mother's scent. I sat at the kitchen table, still in my scrubs. I spend my days navigating the geography of death, holding hands, signing forms, explaining to families that the end isn't a cliff, but a slow, descending slope. I am trained to be the calmest person in the room. I deal in reality, in vital signs, in the absolute finality of a flatline. But tonight, my hands were shaking. It wasn't because of the call. It wasn't because I thought a ghost was trying to reach me. I don't believe in hauntings. I don't believe in spirits lingering in doorways. I believe in genetics. My grandmother died screaming at people who weren't there. She died terrified of the walls, of the nurses, of her own daughter. Early onset dementia. It ate her mind piece by piece, until there was nothing left but fear. And every time I forget where I put my keys, every time I lose a word in the middle of a sentence, I feel the cold breath of that inheritance on my neck. That phone call wasn't a message from the grave. It was a symptom. I stared at the flame of the vanilla candle. My mother, Patricia, had died of a sudden aneurysm when I was 25. She never had the chance to lose her mind, so I never knew if the gene had passed to her or if it had skipped a generation to land squarely on me. Living alone in this big, creaking house was supposed to be my independence. Now, it felt like a quarantine. My Aunt Christina checked on me constantly, not out of love, but out of surveillance. She'd call, her voice dripping with that sickly sweet southern concern, asking if I was feeling confused or losing time. She was waiting for it. She was waiting for me to crack so she could step in and take control. I rubbed my temples. I needed to sleep. I needed to wake up, go to work, and prove to myself that my brain was still sharp, still mine. I blew out the candle. The smoke curled up, smelling like an extinguished birthday. Then the phone rang again. It didn't trill, it screamed. In the silence of that big, empty house, the sound was physical, a sharp blade cutting through the humid air. I stared at the screen. No number, just the word Mom. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct I had as a rational human being told me to throw the device across the room. But my thumb moved on its own. I pressed talk. I held the plastic against my ear. My breath caught in a throat that felt like it was closing up. "Sweetie, open the door, it's cold out here." The voice was warm. It was familiar. It was the voice that had sung me to sleep, scolded me for bad grades, and whispered to me from a hospital bed. It was Patricia. I didn't scream. Panic, for me, doesn't look like hysteria. It looks like procedure. I dropped the phone and moved to the front door. I checked the deadbolt. Locked. I checked the chain. Engaged. I pressed my eye to the peephole, the brass cold against my skin. The distortion of the lens bent the world, but I could see her. Standing on my porch, drenched by the tropical storm, was my mother. The street lamp washed her in a sickly yellow light. She was wearing the gray cardigan we buried her in. She was looking right at the door, and she was smiling that sad, tired smile she wore at the very end. My brain tried to categorize the data: visual hallucination, auditory hallucination, the onset of psychosis. The family curse had finally come for me. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely grip my phone. I needed an anchor. I needed someone to tell me what was real. I dialed Aunt Christina. She was the only family I had left. The sister who had stayed when everyone else drifted away. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Allison? It's 2 in the morning. Christina, I whispered, my voice cracking. She's here. Mom is here. She's on the porch. There was a pause on the line. I expected shock. I expected her to tell me to call the police, to grab a weapon, to run. Instead, she sighed. A long, heavy, pitying sigh. "Oh, Allison," she said, her tone dripping with a sickly sweetness that made my stomach turn. "It's starting, isn't it? Just like your grandmother. I told you this would happen. You've been working too hard." "No, I see her." She called me. "There's no one there, honey," Christina said, her voice smooth, calm, and terrifyingly dismissive. "You're seeing things. It's the stress. Go take one of those pills Dr. Evans gave you. Lock the door. I'll come over in the morning, and we can finally talk about assisted living arrangements. It's for the best." I froze. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, and in that moment, the terror of the ghost faded, replaced by a cold, sharp realization. This wasn't comfort. This was a trap. I realized then what she had been doing for years. It's a subtle kind of poison, the way a toxic family member normalizes cruelty until you think it's love. Christina hadn't been checking on me. She had been conditioning me. Every time I lost my keys, she called it a symptom. Every time I was tired, she called it confusion. She had spent the last 3 years building a narrative where I was the fragile, broken niece, ticking down the clock until I lost my mind. She didn't want me to be well. She needed me to be sick. Because if I was sick, she got control. She got the house. She got the estate. She normalized my insanity so effectively that when I finally reached out for help, she didn't have to lift a finger. She just had to nod and close the cage door. "You're not coming over," I said, my voice steady for the first time that night. "Allison, don't be difficult. You're not well." I hung up. I looked at the phone, then at the door. I wasn't going to let her define my reality. If I was crazy, I was going to be crazy on my own terms. And if I wasn't crazy, then I needed to know who was standing on my porch. I went to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the heavy Maglite flashlight. It was cold, solid aluminum, weighing about 2 pounds. If this was a hallucination, I couldn't hit it. If this was an intruder, I could. And if this was my mother, well, I didn't know what you did with a ghost, but I wasn't going to meet her empty-handed. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm that made my vision blur at the edges. Aunt Christina wanted me to hide under the covers. She wanted me to accept the diagnosis of the fragile, broken girl. But she had forgotten who raised me. Patricia didn't raise me to hide. She raised me to look the monster in the eye and ask for its name. I crossed the foyer, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. The storm outside was raging now, throwing rain against the siding like handfuls of gravel. The woman on the porch had stopped knocking, but I could feel her presence on the other side of the wood. It was a magnetic pull, a terrifying gravity. I stood 3 inches from the door. I didn't look through the peephole this time. I needed to hear it. "I'm not opening this door," I shouted, my voice cutting through the sound of the thunder. "Not until you prove it. Allison?" The voice was muffled, shivering. "Please. It's freezing." "Don't call me that. Anyone can find a name on a deed." I gripped the flashlight tighter, my knuckles turning white. "If you are who you say you are, tell me about the night Dad left." I was 12 years old. I was crying on the bathroom floor because I thought he left because I wasn't a boy. "You sat with me for 3 hours." I leaned my forehead against the cold wood of the door, closing my eyes. "What did you tell me? What were the exact words?" Silence. For 5 agonizing seconds, there was nothing but the wind howling around the eaves and the drumming of rain on the porch roof. My stomach twisted. It was a trick. It was a scammer. Or worse, it was silence because there was no one there, and I was shouting at an empty porch while my mind disintegrated. Then, the voice came back, clear, calm, impossible. "I told you that you aren't broken, you're a mosaic. And mosaics are stronger, because they're built from pieces." The flashlight slipped in my sweaty palm. The air left my lungs in a sharp, painful rush. That wasn't a guess. That wasn't a generic platitude found in a sympathy card. That was the specific, secret architecture of my mother's love. She used to say, We were art made of sharp edges. She used to trace the lines on my palms and tell me I was built to survive being shattered. Nobody knew that phrase. Not Aunt Christina. Not my friends. Just us. The fear didn't vanish, but it changed. It shifted from the terror of insanity to the terror of the unknown reality. I wasn't crazy. I was hearing the truth. I didn't hesitate anymore. I turned the top deadbolt. The metal slide clicked back with a heavy thud. I turned the handle lock. I slid the chain off its track, the metal rattling against the frame. I threw the door open to the storm. She stepped into the foyer, shivering. Water pooled around her sneakers, dark and muddy against the hardwood. Up close, the illusion didn't break, it intensified. She had the same hairline, the same slight crook in her nose, the same way of holding her hands clasped tight in front of her, knuckles white. It was like looking at a photograph that had stepped out of the frame and started breathing. "I'm not her," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I look like her, but I'm not a ghost." "Who are you?" I asked, though deep down, the rational part of my brain, the part that understands biology and chromosomes, was already piecing it together. "My name is Dana. I'm your mother's twin sister." She reached into her soaked coat pocket and pulled out a plastic storage bag. Inside was a folded paper and a DNA test result. She handed them to me. The paper was old, softened by handling. It was a letter, handwritten in ink. I recognized instantly. My mother's looping, careful cursive. "To my sister, for the day it's safe to find us." I stared at the words. The world didn't spin, it just stopped. The silence in the house was deafening. "We were separated at birth," Dana said, her voice gaining strength. "Our parents, your grandparents, they didn't want to. They wanted a perfect, manageable legacy. So they kept Patricia, the quiet one, and they gave me away to a family in Oregon. They erased me, Allison, they cut us in half." Why didn't she tell me? The question clawed its way out of my throat. We told each other everything. She died holding my hand. Why would she keep a sister a secret? Dana stepped closer. She looked at me with an intensity that burned. "Because silence isn't always a lie," she said. "Sometimes, it's a shield." This was the part I hadn't understood. My mother hadn't been hiding Dana from me. She had been hiding me from the truth of our origin. "She called it the invisible chain," Dana explained. "She told me once that survivors don't talk about the thing that almost killed them, because they're terrified it will come back to finish the job. She knew that if she acknowledged me, she'd have to acknowledge the cruelty that separated us. She'd have to admit that her own parents treated children like inventory. She stayed silent to break the chain, Allison. She took the trauma of that separation and buried it with her so you would never have to feel discarded." I looked at the letter again. It wasn't a confession. It was a protection spell. She had carried the weight of a missing half her entire life so I could feel whole. "But I didn't come just to tell you the past," Dana said. "I came because she sent me something. A failsafe." She reached into her bag again. This time, she pulled out a heavy object wrapped in a towel. She unwrapped it on the hallway table. It was a porcelain ballerina. I gasped. I remembered this. It sat on my mother's dresser for 20 years. It was her favorite thing, a delicate, spinning dancer in a pink tutu. It vanished the week she died. I thought it had been lost in the chaos of hospice care. "She mailed this to me 3 days before the aneurysm," Dana said. "She knew Christina was circling. She knew your aunt would try to take the house, the accounts, everything." Dana gripped the base of the statue. "Patricia told me that if anything happened, I had to bring this to you. She said it was the only way you'd be free." With a sharp, decisive twist, Dana unscrewed the bottom of the porcelain stand. It wasn't solid, it was hollow. A small, silver key fell onto the table with a clatter. Next to it, rolled a slip of paper, a bank deposit receipt dated 4 years ago. "There's a safe deposit box in Atlanta," Dana said. "She spent 10 years siphoning cash from the estate before Christina could get her claws into it. There's $85,000 in that box, Allison. It's not inheritance, it's escape money." I stared at the key. My mother hadn't just left me a memory. She had left me a weapon. "Christina knows," Dana whispered. "She knows the money is missing. That's why she's trying to declare you incompetent. She needs control of your finances to find where Patricia hid it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The gaslighting, the concern, the constant calls about my memory. It wasn't about the house. It was about the theft. Christina was hunting for a fortune she couldn't find, and she was willing to break my mind to get it. Suddenly, headlights swept across the front window, blindingly bright. A car door slammed. It was 2:30 in the morning. The kind of hour that belongs only to secrets and emergencies. "Hide," I whispered. Dana didn't argue. She slipped into the shadows of the kitchen pantry, pulling the door until it was just a sliver of darkness. I stood in the foyer, gripping the banister, my heart rate steadying into a cold, hard rhythm. I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear is for the unknown. I knew exactly what was walking up my driveway. The front door flew open. Aunt Christina didn't knock. She didn't call out. She barged in, shaking a wet umbrella onto the hardwood, bringing the smell of rain and expensive perfume into the house. She was wearing a trench coat over her pajamas, her face set in a mask of frantic, performative concern. "Allison!" She scanned the room, her eyes darting to the corners, looking for the madness she was so desperate to find. I saw the lights. I knew it. "You're spiraling again. Get out of my house, Christina. Don't you take that tone with me." She marched forward, pulling a sheaf of papers from her deep pocket. "I'm doing this for you." I called Dr. Evans. "He agrees that living alone is becoming dangerous. If you sign the power of attorney tonight, we can handle this quietly. No courts, no institutions. I'll take care of the estate." She laid the papers on the hall table, right next to the vanilla candle. Her hand was shaking, just a little. It wasn't concern, it was greed disguised as mercy. She needed me declared incompetent before I found the money she couldn't locate. "You don't want to take care of me," I said, my voice low and level. "You want to bury me. You are sick, Allison." Her voice rose, shrill and jagged. "You are seeing ghosts. You called me screaming about your dead mother standing on the porch. Do you know how crazy that sounds? Do you want the state to take the house? Do you want to end up like your grandmother, screaming at walls?" She was good. She was terrifyingly good at twisting reality until it choked you. For 3 years, I had let her define the boundaries of my mind. I had let her tell me I was broken. "I'm not seeing things, Christina," I said. "But you are." I looked toward the kitchen. The pantry door creaked open. Dana stepped into the hallway light. She walked slowly, her steps silent. She was still wearing the gray cardigan. Her hair was still damp, plastered to her forehead in the exact way my mother's hair used to curl when she worked in the garden. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, a perfect, living mirror of the sister Christina had betrayed. Christina froze. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like the blood had simply evaporated. She dropped the umbrella. It clattered loudly against the floor. "Patricia?" It came out as a whimper, a terrified, childlike sound. Dana didn't speak. She just tilted her head, watching. "No." Christina scrambled back, stumbling over her own feet, pressing herself against the doorframe. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the figure in the gray sweater. "You're dead. I saw you die. I planned the funeral." "Guilt is a powerful thing, Christina," I said. "It makes you see what you fear most." "I didn't mean to," Christina screamed, the facade of the caring aunt shattering completely. She wasn't talking to me anymore. She was pleading with the ghost. "I didn't steal it. I held on to it. For Allison. She wasn't ready. Please, Patricia, don't hurt me. I'll give it back." She was confessing. In her terror, she was giving us everything. She admitted to the theft, to the lies, to the manipulation. All because she thought she was being haunted by a vengeful spirit. Dana took one more step forward. The floorboard creaked. "I'm not a ghost, Christina," Dana said. Her voice was harder than my mother's ever was. It was the voice of someone who had survived being erased. "And I'm not Patricia." Christina stopped hyperventilating. She blinked, her brain trying to recalibrate. "What?" "I'm the sister you made sure she forgot," Dana said. "I'm the other half." The silence that followed was absolute. Christina looked from Dana to me, the realization dawning on her. It wasn't the supernatural coming for her. It was the truth. I stepped forward and picked up the small silver key from the table. I held it up so it caught the light. "We found the ballerina, Christina," I said. "And we know about the $85,000 in Atlanta." Christina looked at the key, then at the twin, then at the papers she had brought to imprison me. She realized the game was over. There was no medical argument she could make, no gaslighting that could cover this. She had been caught in a lie, decades in the making. She didn't fight, she didn't argue. She grabbed the doorknob, wrenched the door open, and ran out into the rain without looking back. The storm broke just before dawn. The rain stopped as suddenly as it had started, leaving the world outside my window washed clean and glistening. The humidity broke, replaced by a cool, steady breeze coming off the river. For the first time in 3 years, the house didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like a fortress that had held. Aunt Christina didn't come back. She didn't call. She didn't file any papers. The moment the light touched her secrets, she scurried back into the dark. We used the money in the Atlanta safe deposit box to hire a ruthless estate attorney who made sure she would never step foot on this property again. The house is mine, legally, finally, mine. But the real victory wasn't the deed. It was the quiet morning 2 days later. Dana and I drove to the cemetery. The ground was soft, the air smelling of wet earth and pine. We didn't bring lavender. That was the scent of the past, of the secret my mother had to keep. We brought something new. We knelt in the dirt side by side, our hands covered in soil, and planted vanilla orchids. I looked at Dana. I looked at the face that had haunted my nightmares just 48 hours ago, and I didn't see a ghost. I saw the rest of the story. I saw the other half of the mosaic. "Do you think she knew?" I asked, patting the earth down around the roots. "Do you think she knew we'd find each other?" Dana smiled, and it was the first time I'd seen that smile without fear attached to it. "She didn't know," Dana said. "She hoped. That's why she left the key. Hope is just a plan you trust to someone else." I sat back on my heels. For years, I thought the empty space inside me was a symptom of sickness. I thought the gaps in my memory, the feeling of being untethered, were signs that my mind was crumbling like my grandmother's. I wasn't crumbling, I was just incomplete. Grief convinces you that you are ruined. It tells you that the person you lost took all the light with them when they left. It tells you that you are a house with the doors locked, waiting for the inevitable decay. But that morning, sitting in the garden with a sister I never knew I had, I realized my mother was right. We aren't broken objects waiting to be thrown away. We are mosaics. We are made of sharp, jagged pieces, loss, fear, secrets, trauma. But when you fit them together, when you let the light hit them just right, they don't look like a disaster, they look like art. To anyone watching this who feels like they are missing a piece of themselves tonight, you are not crazy, you are not damaged goods, you are just still under construction. The things you lost might not come back in the way you expect. They might not show up on your porch in a rainstorm, but love has a way of finding the cracks in the wall. Dana stays in the guest room now. We drink coffee on the porch in the mornings. We are learning each other's history, filling in the blanks, building something stronger than the silence that tried to separate us. We are just 2 pieces of glass, finally catching the light. If this story reminded you that you are stronger than the secrets kept from you, hit that like button. And if you have a mosaic story, a time you rebuilt yourself from broken pieces, tell me in the comments. I read them all.